Hello there everyone, my name is Casey, you may know me as Acer, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Star Wars sequel trilogy. More importantly, how I believe that a few small changes could make this good trilogy great. Now let me start by saying, I'm actually a huge fan of the sequel trilogy. I admit that there is a lot of flaws, and we're actually going to discuss most of them here. However, this video is not intended to hate on any of the people involved with the sequels or the movies in general. I've been trying to get this video out there for a while now, ever since episode 9 came out. I wound up making this PowerPoint slide presentation like 6 months ago, so I do want to say that a couple of the topics that I'm going to discuss and some of my personal theories, I have since making these slides seen other people discuss them with their own spins on them as well. Anyways, the basic pitch of this video is to, present a couple of ideas, small things that, if they altered within the sequel trilogy, perhaps in like a re-release or an extended edition of the sequels themselves, things that I think would make what I think is really good films overall just even better, better Star Wars films. And that's not to say that they aren't bad Star Wars films. However, George Lucas did in fact go over his original trilogy and edit it himself. He added a couple of smaller scenes, he changed some scenes, some were liked by the fans, some were not liked by the fans, but I think that Disney could greatly benefit by doing something like this and maybe releasing it as, a special edition on Disney+. With all that being said, let's get into our first topic, the presence of well-established aliens from other Star Wars films. This is something that the sequel trilogy was highly lacking. And I know myself and a lot of other fans were really disappointed. To my knowledge, the only other Star Wars aliens that we saw in the sequels were Chewbacca, Nien, Admiral Akbar, and a couple other Mon Calamari, and then the Ewoks in Episode 9. This is something that just really took the Star Wars feel out of these movies. Not to say that they didn't still feel like Star Wars, but, when we visited Maz Kanata's palace, and we visited, the casino on Canto Bight, these are scenes that definitely should have included a lot more familiar aliens. I have no problem with adding some new designs as well, but I think there should be a nice even blend, a mix of, things that we're familiar with and brand new things that have been added to the table. And I think the prequels did a great job at this, and I think even other Disney projects have done a really good job at this as well. You have Star Wars Rebels and The Mandalorian. A nice consistent blend of both original Star Wars alien designs and some new ones as well. Now, what I'm suggesting, and I know this is probably a moot point, and I don't know how likely it is that they'll ever even consider doing this, but if they were to consider doing a special edition release of the sequel trilogy, they should totally go in and digitally add some familiar aliens into the sequences like Maz Kanata's castle and the Canto Bight casino. I think this would greatly add to the overall Star Wars feel of the sequel trilogy, and I think a lot of fans would greatly appreciate this. And I mean no disrespect to any of the amazing talent that worked behind the scenes on any of the sequel movies. All of the designs that they came up with, I genuinely liked. I just thought there was too much of them. I thought there was too much new and not enough old. And some people would combat what I'm saying right now and say, well, you can't rely too much on nostalgia. And to that, I would say, what does it have to do with nostalgia? This is a galaxy far, far away. The fact that the species that we have seen in the past just don't show up at all doesn't make a lot of sense. It's not about nostalgia. It's about cohesiveness. And one of the things that I'm going to talk later on in this video is the Battle of Exegol, and why, this is also a problem in the Battle of Exegol. We just see a bunch of ships, but we don't see anyone piloting the ships, and this is one of the problems, I think. I'm going to go into more detail about that later, though. All right, next up is something I think a lot of fans are going to agree with me here. Admiral Akbar's final words to the crew of the Radish should have been spoken in The Last Jedi. For those that don't know, there's a comic that, delves into this more, but basically one of his men turns to him and says, "Torpedoes inbound," and then he turns around to all of his crew and he says, "It's been an honor serving with you all." The fact that this, at the bare minimum, wasn't included in The Last Jedi really bugs me. And, I'm not the biggest fan of Admiral Holdo, but I will admit the scene where she sacrifices her life was really admirable, and just the overall, just cinematography of the scene was just breathtaking. It was amazing. And I'm not suggesting that we remove Admiral Holdo, as some people have done in the past, because that is ridiculous. She's a part of Star Wars now. We just have to accept that. But, nonetheless, Admiral Akbar should have had at least some final words. I'd say the same thing for Nien in Episode 9, because, apparently he died off screen as well. I walked down to that movie thinking he lived, and then I saw that the novelization confirmed that he died, which was disappointing, to say the least. But, and some people argue, well, they're just side characters, they don't mean anything. But, Admiral Holdo never existed until The Last Jedi, but she got a hero's death. Admiral Akbar, he may have been a side character, but he's still a larger character in the overall Star Wars universe. He at least warrants some final words, and same with Nien. So this is something that I definitely think they should add if they were to ever do a special edition of the sequels. They should totally just add a scene of Admiral Akbar turning to his crew and saying, "It's been an honor serving with you all." That, at the very least, would satisfy my needs for a sufficient Admiral Akbar death. All right, this next one is a big one. It is highly debated amongst the fandom. A lot of people were really conflicted about the direction that they took Luke's character in Episode 8, The Last Jedi. And let me start by saying that I personally was not one of these people. I actually really enjoyed Luke's character arc in The Last Jedi. The Last Jedi is actually my favorite movie in the entire sequel trilogy. However, let's get into this. Is a personal theory of mine, and I came up with it only a couple of weeks after seeing Episode 9. But what I want them to do is reveal that Palpatine was behind Luke's intentions during his encounter with young Ben Solo. I think it would make a lot of sense if they somehow revealed that Palpatine had been seducing Luke's mind with the dark side, and that is why he ignited his lightsaber on his nephew. Now, I know some people will say, well, this will diminish his arc in The Last Jedi, for those that were a fan of his arc, and, that was me too, but I would say that I don't think this would diminish his arc overall. I think this would actually add to it. And initially, I was thinking that maybe they could, include this as a scene in Episode 8, and then I thought about it more, and I think it would actually fit better in Episode 9. I think Palpatine should be the one to reveal this to either Rey or Ben. And I think that would just be great. And I think that would really explain... Luke has acted out on his emotions in the past before, with Vader. But I think this may have just taken it a little bit too far. Now, like I said, I was okay with it, but I think this would greatly add to the overall story. Just for fans who were, like more backstory as to, how Palpatine was involved throughout this trilogy, instead of just showing up in Episode 9. Reveal his intentions and that, he has been controlling the strings from the very beginning. And that he really has always been around controlling everything from the shadows. And then I think this would greatly add to Luke's character. I think it would add to Palpatine's character and Ben's character. And overall, I think this idea is amazing. If they ever decided to add just one little scene of just Palpatine basically revealing this to someone. Maybe it's Ben, maybe it's Rey. Either way, I think this would be a great inclusion. And I would like to say that I have actually seen some other people, talk about this since I came up with my own theory, and they've gave it their own little twist on it as well. So I think there's a lot of people out there that would agree with this theory as well. All right, next up is probably what I found to be the most disappointing aspect of the sequel trilogy, the Battle of Exegol. Now, again, I am not one to hate on the sequel trilogy, but let me just say, the hype that I had for going into Episode 9, I had seen Endgame. Now, I know maybe it's not fair to, compare it to Avengers Endgame, but the expectations I had for Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, were right up there with Endgame. And honestly, it didn't deliver. And I really think that it had the potential to do so. I think that, for one, the movie was just way too short. And especially the Battle of Exegol, the final act of this movie was just way too short. It should have been much longer. And this is something that I think they could definitely still resolve if they ever decided to put the funds into a re-release of the sequel trilogy. And I know, this is probably false hope. They're probably never going to ever do it. But these are just my thoughts. These are my opinions. And I think a lot of fans would definitely pay money. Disney, you better be listening. I think they would definitely pay money to see a re-release of the sequel trilogy if you promoted it with some added scenes featuring some of these ideas. Now back to the Battle of Exegol. It was supposed to be the final climactic battle of the entire Skywalker saga. And I think it was really anticlimactic when, we see Poe turn the corner in his X-Wing around the Star Destroyer. The music was great and the buildup was great, but then they're already just there. All the ships are just there on this bland blue color palette. I thought it was very anticlimactic. I think what should have happened is we should have focused on more of the ships jumping out of hyperspace one by one and zooming into the bridges or the control centers or the cockpits and just put a focus on who it was that was flying these ships and who was coming to aid the resistance in their time of need, their final battle. The novelization goes into great detail about this. We see Alphabet Squadron, Inferno Squadron, the Ghost Crew, and the Mon Calamari fleet. We should have seen them in the movie. This goes back to what I was talking about earlier with, seeing the species from old Star Wars movies. The fact that we just didn't see them come to help. We see the ships. We should have seen the actual people as well. And, we also have, the Wookiee ships, and we have the Mandalorian ships, and just a bunch of other ships as well. We should have had a more focus on who it was that was helping the Resistance, not just one shot of, a giant fleet of ships and no personality to it at all. And aside from that, I definitely think it should have just been longer overall. Rey versus Palpatine and with Ben, I think that was a little too short as well. I think Palpatine died way too fast. I was okay with Rey defeating Palpatine. I have no issues with that. I just think it happened too fast. I think Ben should have stuck around a little bit longer. Now, I don't know how much deleted content they actually had from Episode 9. I know they did not release a lot, if any. Correct me on that in the comments, but I would really like it if maybe they did actually have some other footage that they just didn't choose to release in the final cut of the movie. And I know there would be a lot of strings they'd have to pull to actually accomplish this and maybe film this, and it would cost a lot, but I definitely think it would be worth it. I think the fans would appreciate it. I would pay to see it, and I think the Battle of Exegol, if they ever were to consider doing anything, they should totally extend Episode 9. I think we should get at least a 3-hour Episode 9. I really think that that was the biggest flaw of episode 9, is how short the movie was and how rushed it was. And I know I got a little bit down there, but I would like to just remind you guys that I really do love the sequel trilogy. I love all Star Wars. There is not a day goes by that I will ever hate or diss on any of these movies. I love them all. I acknowledge that every single trilogy has flaws. These are just my honest, genuine criticisms for the sequels and, just my overall feelings and like how I felt when I was watching these movies or maybe after these movies. And don't let my opinions affect your own opinion as well. If you don't agree with some of the things that I say, that is great. I don't want you to, swap what you feel just because you listen to something that I said. And for the most part, I really love the sequel trilogy. I would really like to just drive that home because this is not meant to be a hate video. I personally pride myself on not hating on, anything about Star Wars because I don't think hate goes anywhere. It always does more harm than good. You're not going to accomplish anything with hate. And I really do just love all Star Wars. And, I acknowledge that everything has its flaws, its pros, its cons. And these are just things that I think that if they were to ever consider doing a special edition release, that maybe they could consider adding a couple of these things. So again, and literally every time I watched one of the Disney sequel trilogy movies, I was so excited before I watched the movie, during the movie, and after the movie. And, I still watch them all with excitement, just filled with joy, because I'm a huge Star Wars fan. So again, these are just honest criticisms, not hate. I love all Star Wars, so just keep that in mind. Okay, the last thing we're going to talk about today is this. This image here, what you see is a deleted, unused concept from Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. You may have seen me talk about this on my TikTok account. I did make a video. It kind of blew up there. But basically, what this image is Kylo Ren interrogating Chewbacca after he's been captured by the First Order on the desert planet of Pisana. And basically what's happening here is Kylo Ren is trying to perform the same Force ability on Chewbacca that he did to Poe Dameron in Episode 7, The Force Awakens. He's trying to look into Chewie's mind and obtain the location of Finn, Rey, and Poe. However, Chewbacca resists this and instead starts to play happy memories of from when Ben was a kid. It is beyond me how they just did not include this scene in the movie. I think this would have been such a beautiful, emotional, touching scene between Ben and Chewbacca. And the worst part yet is I think this would have been the perfect opportunity for them to have, finally given us the reunion between the original trilogy characters. One of the memories that Chewbacca could have played through in his head would have been of Lando, Leia, Han, Luke, Chewbacca, a young Ben, maybe C-3PO and R2 are there as well, and they're just all around smiling. There doesn't have to be any words. It could just literally be them standing around a young Ben Solo, just smiling. And I know that this is incorporated into the novelization of Episode 9, and I think that's great, but I also definitely think it should have been included in the movie as well. Because when I first saw this movie and when I saw that they faked out Chewbacca's death, I was really upset, to be honest. I just couldn't believe that they did that, and there was no actual weight to it because they faked down his death, and then a couple of minutes later he's alive and they rescue him. There was no point to it. I feel like it was just I feel it was a mistake, but I think if they had added this scene, it would have provided some substance to his fake out. And I know you're probably thinking, well, how would they have been able to, incorporate this scene if Carrie Fisher passed away back in 2016? Well, for anyone who doesn't know, all of the footage that you see in Episode 9 of Princess Leia is just unused footage from, Episode 7 and Episode 8. And I will say, what they were able to accomplish with Princess Leia's character in Episode 9, I think it was truly remarkable. It was just absolutely beautiful that they were able to, send off Carrie Fisher's Princess Leia in the way that they did. And I think they could have done the exact same thing for this scene. All they would have needed, and I think that they probably could have just used the same scene from the end of Episode 9 where she's just smiling, and maybe they just digitally altered the clothes that she's wearing. And all we would have needed was just a scene of her smiling, or maybe just with a grin. And she's just standing next to, Luke, Han, Lando, and young Ben. And I think it would have just been just such an emotionally impactful scene. I think a lot of fans I know a lot of fans really wanted to see the original cast back together. And I think this would have been the perfect opportunity to do it. So if there was anything that I would, totally wish for them to do in a special edition release of the sequel trilogy, it would to be add this scene. Because I think so many people would love to see this. And obviously you have to get the approval of Carrie Fisher's estate. And, if they would say like, hey, we sent off Carrie Fisher's character as Princess Leia, then I think that's fine. And then you also have to, worry about, whether or not Harrison, Mark Hamill, and Billy D. Williams would like to come back. But I think if you were able to get everyone's approval, and if you were able to, get this done, I think it is something that would be totally worth it. I would love to see this, and I know a lot of other people would too. And I just think this is was such a missed opportunity not to include the scene in episode 9, and I think it would have, like I said, it would have given substance to Chewie's, fake out of his death. I think this would have been a great scene to see. All in all, I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. I had a lot of fun making it. And again, the intention behind this video was not to hate on the sequels. I love all the Star Wars movies. I love the sequel trilogy. Obviously, the original trilogy, if you're wondering, is my favorite trilogy. And then the sequels and the prequels are probably like a sandwich. They're like right next to each other. There isn't one that I like more than the other. So I love all Star Wars. These are just a couple of my thoughts, my opinions, some things small things, or maybe some are a little more than small. Some things that I think that if they added, included, or maybe just changed the slightest bit to the sequel trilogy, perhaps if they were to ever consider doing an extended release or a special edition release on Disney Plus or maybe in the theaters, I don't know. I think these few ideas I think would go a long way. Thank you all so much for watching, and may the Force be with you all. Stay tuned for more videos as I have a bunch more on the way. May the Force be with you all. Always.